Alderman Leahy is absent. Alderwoman O'Neill. And Alderwoman Parker Tice.
Here.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for taking the time to meet today at noon and try to get through in orderly fashion. Item number 2 is approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, that'll be approved by acclamation. Item number 3, there are no announcements, appointments, or proclamations. Item number 4, citizen comments. Do we have anyone, any citizenry wants to come forward and make a comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move along. Item number 5, report of the committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Andy is absent. Alderwoman O'Neill?
No report.
Alderwoman Tice?
No report.
All right, speeding through. All right, item number 6 on the agenda is the city administrator's report. Bola, do you have?
I have no report.
Oh, are we not doing the?
Oh, we are. I'm sorry, I forgot. What did you say?
It was, so item number 6, the city report. It says 6A is citywide cellular phone services.
If you would recognize Larry Covey.
Yes, please, Larry, come on down.
So, at least for ever since we've been supporting the city of Brentwood, the device.
The mic. Thanks.
Just look it up.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Most of the devices, besides the public safety departments, the cellular phones are at this point they're 6-year-old iPhones for most of them, and as of September, the latest iOS from Apple won't even run on an iPhone 5S. And we've received complaints over the years, about connectivity, because the older iPhones can't even connect to the latest and greatest cellular technology. So last year during budget planning, we had put into the budget, and it was approved for an FY19 project to replace all the cell phones citywide. And so over the last probably 3 or 4 months, my staff and I have met with, I'll call them the 4 largest cell phone providers, T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T, and just kind of saw what kind of agreements we could get into with them, how we can keep from falling into this process of not ever getting a new cell phone. And so it was big to me to give the city staff up-to-date devices, and then of course the most cost-effective monthly service plans. So I don't know if you guys have the memo in front of you, but there's a lot of detail behind each one of these numbers, but in the end, those are the numbers that each of the vendors came back with. That's for 19 cellular phones and 1 hotspot. That's citywide, how many that we have, not counting public safety. As you can see from that list, Verizon came in the lowest at $11,116. That's a 2-year cost, and that's actually no upfront hardware cost. That is just the service plan for 24 months. That's what it comes to for that many devices. So based on those numbers, what the IT department would recommend is moving forward with an agreement with Verizon. It's not an actual contract because we're on a month-to-month basis still. We could add or remove devices as needed on a month-to-month basis, so we're not locked into any type of long-term agreement. One of the things we did to try and keep costs as low as possible, and 2 of the 4 vendors got creative with their pricing. We looked at her, because of course data usage is what costs most on cell plans. So we looked at the previous 12 months of data that we currently have, which right now T-Mobile is our current provider. We looked at our highest month of data usage, which happened to be 9.97 gigabytes, if that means anything to anyone. So we went back to the vendors and said, can you get creative with pricing, and let's do a shared data plan instead of unlimited data plan. And so Verizon, for instance, the agreement we would be going into would be based on a 25 gigabyte shared data plan per month, which is 2.5 times the highest data that we've consumed in the last 12 months. So I feel pretty comfortable with that amount. Another thing Verizon did that was unique to the other providers, they've agreed to give us a $200 one-time credit per phone number that we poured over from a different provider. That really is what made them the cheapest, because it worked out to about a $3,800 one-time credit. And this would give all city staff an iPhone 8 64 gig. And after 2 years, if we decide we wanted new phones, we could get new phones at no cost again 24 months from now and keep the same plan. One other, I guess, conversation I've had on some level with BOLA, Karen, and actually all the non-public safety departments during budget planning this year was the concept of offering a stipend possibly, instead of providing a device to these 19 individuals and paying for a service plan. If I give you so many dollars per month, do you agree to use that in lieu of getting the device in the service plan? I know during budget planning I had at least one department who was interested. It was the Public Works Department. They had voiced, but I believe Karen brought it up at an executive team meeting and didn't get much feedback on it. With that being said, I kind of figured the break-even point based on this Verizon contract, it would be $30 per device. And I guess I don't see the harm in offering a $30 per device stipend, since it would cost the city no money to do that, and some employees might see it as a benefit to not have to carry 2 devices and to carry 1 device instead. So my recommendation would be to offer a $30 a month stipend in lieu of a cell phone for any position that the city has deemed necessary to have a cell phone as well. And that's it.
You indicated where the $30 was coming from, if we had to pay it. Do you want to cover that?
So yeah, if we have to pay it, I guess I don't totally understand the back end financials piece of it, but basically we wouldn't provide them a cell phone device or that monthly service plan, and that's where the $30 comes from. That's what we're going to pay regardless to give them a cell phone. So it would just be the stipend instead of providing them that device in the plan.
Questions?
I just comment. I think it would be an advantage to people to use their own personal phone, because everybody's juggling 2 phones.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems, if people are amenable to that, that it would be a worthwhile thing to have done. So I would be in favor of that.
Alderwoman Tice?
So I have a question about that. If someone is using their personal phone, do we have policies about searching the phone? Like, I should know this, but I don't yet know this. Like, is there anything we'd ever want to search, or if somebody posted something that was contrary to any policies we have and it's a personal owned device?
So that's a different issue.
It's a different issue, but
It's a different issue.
it's a totally different issue. Do we have that kind of policy?
We have a policy
And what would,
that regulates, so to speak, what you can post on social media, about city-related, work, your personal social media, if we see it. And there have been issues in the past, and so that becomes a personnel matter, and we deal with that accordingly. But that's different from the ability, either through Sunshine, to request related matters. So what you're doing is you're agreeing to make it available.
so I would think that employees would need to understand that.
We would have a policy, a disclosure form or a form created by the city attorney, so that when they agree to the stipend, they're signing off on that as well. And we would make that very clear.
Yeah,
That's best practices anywhere.
Okay, yeah, but
It's
that's
not a personal cell phone anymore. It becomes a public one if it gets subpoenaed. or
right, it would
whatever.
become a public
Yeah,
cell phone.
that's-
It's not your own cell phone. So people should really understand that it's not just a $30 bonus a month. It's,
And they would understand that, because Larry apparently has experience with that, because they
Yeah, in the
they
city
do
of
that.
Clayton, we used to offer 30. We increased it this year. It's actually costing the city a little bit to offer that convenience to their employees. And the employees in Clayton are across the board. Some are so anti doing it because of exactly what you're bringing up, where others, I guess, feel they have nothing to hide, and they sign off on the policy, and they're, to them, the convenience of being able to have one device, they're good with accepting that. And we're not forcing this on anybody, it would just be an offer if someone wanted to take up the offer.
So would they have, you could have a phone or a stipend, up to you? Is that what you're, or is it that it would just be a stipend?
Either or.
Okay.
Yeah, either or.
Do you, I mean, I know personally, the idea that my phone would be the subject of a sunshine law, you know, the answer's not no, it's
Yep.
It's a bad no.
bold, capital, underlined, and circled no. And I mean, I would just think from, my concern is, I'm, with the stipend, and yes, I appreciate, because I have in, you know, former employers, they gave me a phone and they took it back when I left, that, you know, there's a sunshine law request, a disgruntled employee is separated from employment, taking their phone with them, and now I need those text messages, and now all of a sudden, and they're like, no, I'm not going to accommodate you, and so now I need to get, you know, a subpoena and bring them into court. I mean, to me, it seems cleaner that this is my phone, this is your work phone, you use it for work, and then you give it back when you leave, or you give it to me when I ask you, because you have no expectation of privacy on this phone.
That's correct. The biggest issue I've seen in my experience with it is they take their cell phone with them, their cell phone number with them when they leave. So people that are used to calling that cell phone number are going to continue to call that. I did it when I left my previous employer. I get calls periodically, and I have to let them know I no longer work there. That is the one side effect that I've seen
And that's
with
something
it.
I didn't even, that's,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that's another.
But
gram
we
on the
do
scale.
that here anyway. If we have had employees that have been here 30 years, that have had a cell number. So when they leave, they want to take that number with them, and the city has allowed them to do that. So we deal with that anyway.
So, I mean, I'm not dying on this hill. I mean, that would just be, I mean, I think it makes sense that we have a method of communication, you know, for these non-emergency employees. I personally am for, that they have to have a city-issued cell phone, you know, but I certainly would recommend passing that on for more voices to weigh in. Maybe I'm,
So we would
maybe
need a
I'm too,
recommendation
you know,
from here to
too
go
much
to
a
the
lawyer.
board.
What's that?
We would need a recommendation from Ways and Means to go to the board, knowing fully well that the city attorney would help us write, you know, an acknowledgement disclosure form for those employees who choose to keep their own phone and get the stipend. So it would be an education process. It wouldn't just be, here's the $30, be on your way. There is a process to this.
I guess my other thought on that is your example of having to get a subpoena to get whatever data because the employee's not here, or maybe they are here and don't want to give up their phone. Like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, we don't have access to those text messages or other than the phone
And
number.
texts are golden.
Yeah, I mean,
People
it takes a
think that their
subpoena.
texts are
It
never
takes a
gonna get
subpoena for
discovered.
me to
Like,
get that information from the provider, regardless, even if it's a city-owned device. AT&T just doesn't give up that information without some type of court order. Because I have no way to see it other than the phone number.
On the
that-
current city cell phones, let's just say someone lost one, don't you guys have a way to like wipe it or something right
Yeah,
away?
we put a mobile device management client on it, and if a device is lost, I can issue a wipe command, which would basically reset the phone like it was brand new, back
Can
to
you
nothing.
do that on a stipend phone?
You can. There's the biggest topic of conversation that I've had in 2 other cities, and they went differently on it, but the person would have to agree to allow me to install that piece of software on their phone to do that. We can do it where I only wipe the city email. It wouldn't even be the rest of the device. But for instance, Clayton doesn't require that.
Does or doesn't?
Does not. Nope.
I hadn't thought about
I
that
just
either.
I hadn't
one
thought
other-
about that either, yeah, that's a whole
I just had one other question. So, I think, what it was. Okay, so I guess I don't care, a stipend or this. What I do care about is either or.
Yep.
Because you already know what has happened when we try to switch over with some of the police and fires contracts over to you. who's paid for it, who's not paid for it. It's been sitting there not paid because someone else is paid. I'm afraid this is gonna happen when we've got stipend, some people getting stipend, and then some is getting billed on Verizon. And then if someone leaves, make sure the stipend stops, and a new person comes in and takes a job, well, I want a cell phone. Then we're right back to, would we buy them a cell phone?
That's
offer
what
them-
we do in other
Okay.
cities, yes.
All right.
Yep.
I guess that was just my concern, is like, for finance, it would be a lot easier for tracking to or if I knew that it was all Verizon, I know Larry's responsible
Yep.
for that bill. If it's all stipend, it's probably gonna come between me and Jason and HR to make sure.
It's usually an
they're
email
paid.
from a department director to HR to
Right.
say, I approve a stipend
Right,
for this
and then we have to
person.
figure out how to make sure we get the money every month, or whatever, however we're gonna pay for it. But then doing it two separate ways is where it could get a little muddy, is all I was thinking of.
Every city has a policy or a process in which to process those who are leaving. So we do have a list of everything that the city has made available to that individual, and there is always an exit interview. So during that exit interview is when you take all those things back. So there is a process in place if it is followed.
I suppose, like, if I'm summarily fired because of the inappropriate text messages I sent on my phone.
I love it. Go on.
To which I do not, and you're like, oh, I want your exit interview. I'm like, sorry, and I'm taking my phone and my other things, and I'm never coming back until.
So usually there's a strategy to do that.
So, I mean,
there's a way to get all that information if you're seasoned enough at your job to know how to do it.
Is there, so is this something that goes to the
Yeah.
main board? I mean,
Yeah.
so I support the action. I'm for the cell phones, but I certainly, that the city issues cell phones and there not be a stipend. But,
Right.
Certainly the majority carries the day. But I wouldn't
But
want to
it's the
have my
decision
opinion
from here.
not move it along to the next stage. So others can
It should
have
be
that
the
opinion.
decision from here so that we're
Okay.
not having that conversation again at the board level. So whatever you all are comfortable with based on what he has recommended.
So, may I ask, or do we currently, right now, do we only have city-issued cell phones?
Yes.
Yes.
And there is interest in this from employees, or no, I mean, how do we, are you just
There was at
seeing
least
interest in
one
other
depart,
cities?
well, other cities offer it and do it, but there was one department, I don't know if Dan remembers, it was during the Public Works budget planning with IT and Public Works that Dan and I believe Kyle even asked about the possibility of doing it. And that's really what got the thought process going in my head, knowing that this project was this year.
Got crickets. I asked the management team, I think Eric might have spoke up a little bit, but it was a little bit different subject. But I didn't hear anything else, and it's what Bola said, we should.
I
ask
wanted
the
to give
management team.
people an opportunity.
Right.
If this committee were to approve of it, I mean, there's certain things where I think at a executive level I can make decisions on and be fine with it. But since we're hearing interest, I wanted to give people an opportunity. That's why I encouraged Larry in our discussions to present it as part of this presentation.
Does every member of, every employee get one?
No.
No, there's 19, besides public safety departments, there's 19 citywide only.
So we're not talking about the person who has the snowplow having a cell phone?
Maybe the crew leader.
Yeah, I have a list of them. I
The
don't
crew
truthfully, I
leader
don't
would
know
have
the
it. All
positions.
department, not all department directors, department directors who I would tend to need a contact after hours for emergency matters have it. And then there are key supervisory positions in public works and parks that have it. That's pretty much it.
So as I read this, there's an ethical posture and there is a financial posture in terms of keeping everything straight. Is one of those overridingly important?
I don't know that there's an ethical. I'm
Well,
not
in
sure what
terms
you
of
mean by
whether you
ethical.
want it on your personal phone or not. That one. Maybe that's not the right word
Okay.
for it.
Yeah.
So is one of those more important than the other? That was,
Yeah, that's it. It depends on the individual. I mean, I carry 3 phones. So, when I'm out of the country, I have another phone. So,
So are
you
we, do we have sort of 3 scenarios? One, city-issued phones, 2, all to stipend, and then 3, make your choice? Or what are we
It's
being?
1 city phone,
Okay,
or for those who want a stipend, give them a stipend rather than a city phone. So it's
I
going to
don't
be
think you
their
could
choice.
force it.
And, huh?
You couldn't force
You couldn't
everyone
force
to
it,
take
it's,
a
it's,
stipend.
it's whoever wants it. And I don't
Yeah.
get the sense that we're gonna have a lot of people take it up.
might
It
not.
might be 3 or 4, but if you all don't support that, then you should say just city phones.
and I'm trying to think how best to, do we need a majority of a quorum or a majority of the committee?
The majority of the quorum.
So how best do you think that's just a, I mean, I have an
So,
opinion, I'm just.
yeah,
all right,
motion.
Come on.
Either.
A
You know, do
motion,
a motion
a
to-
second, or lack of a second.
For one, I mean, not the other, you know, so we choose one, that's all.
Yeah.
Are those 2 different?
Yeah, I think it's
So I
just
guess,
the
you
two.
know, we'll start with straight up cell phones and see where we land. And then,
Yes.
and then we'll go
Perfect.
to the other option and see where we land. And then I think we'll have a decision.
Okay.
And if we abstain, because we can see both sides of the issue and don't we have.
Well,
An abstention,
no,
I think
so
it would
I
be a
got a
no.
legal opinion on that yesterday, that abstain really means a no vote. So I need to confirm that with Kevin, but yesterday I got an opinion that abstention means a no vote.
May I ask one more question before we frame the motion? So these other cities who have done this, did they wrestle with these legal questions and they clearly came out that the $30 stipend or whatever amount of stipend was okay?
Yep.
Did they wrestle with these same discussions?
Yeah, they did. They come to different conclusions. To me, it's really a convenience that you're offering. You're not forcing it. That's why I don't even personally have a strong opinion, because if you don't want it, that's fine too. Here's your city-provided device. But like I said, the biggest one is probably the mobile device management, because I would actually have to install a piece of software on that phone. And Clayton in particular decided not to force that, and what that means is if that phone's lost, I don't have the capability to wipe the city data off that device, which is just going to be email.
Okay, may I make a motion? Well, or what motion?
What is, if we started with the cell phone motion and see, does that work?
Sure.
And then if it fails, then we go to the other, or what do you want? I mean, I'm kind of.
Let's just make one motion and see where that takes us.
Why don't you
Right,
make a
here's the motion I'm gonna make. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this new cell phone policy with Verizon and include a stipend for employees who don't want the city phone of $30 a month, but those employees are required to have a
Mobile
mobile
device management.
device
Yeah.
put on the phone so that the IT department can wipe clean the city information if lost.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, roll call.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderwoman Parker Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
I'll say no. But we win, so we're done with that. We move on. It's okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is there a, I think it was Keith gonna go
Yes.
before that's
Yes.
not exactly on the agenda, but,
So
or
then it's,
comprehensial, is it?
it's on there, but it's further down.
Okay, so I guess we'll just, so we don't have
Compre-
any more under the city administrator's report, is
That's
that
it.
correct? Okay, so item number 7, department report, comprehensive, the capper discussion, I guess that would be, we could
City treasurer.
recognize our city treasurer.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
At the request of the city, I reached out to all the parties involved with the current year audit and the bonding company to see what type of requirements we have moving forward with the audit. I spoke with the auditing firm, I spoke with the accounting firm, spoke with bond counsel, spoke with underwriter, and I spoke with city staff concerning this to try to figure out the best solutions moving forward to help the city not run into the same issues of having the audit be late, and make sure that, just moving forward, we're in a better position. So some of the initial recommendations that I have come up with would be to perform duties that can be performed early, start those in January. Stuff like fixed assets, the fixed asset work can be started in January. Requesting valuations from third parties can be done in January. These can be done outside of the auditing firm. We send out our fixed asset list to all our departments, asking them to update these lists. When we wait till May, we end up waiting another month for the department heads to go through the fixed asset list. So I'm recommending that in January, we update the list to the best of our ability for assets that we have. We then send those lists off to departments to review the list to make sure everything's there. That's a timely process that can be done in January that will help expedite things. Also recommend we have a new software. And from talking to Karen, the software has been partially implemented with some more stuff that needs to do. We have funds. Part of the problem that occurred in the last audit is there was funds outside of the accounting software that are being tracked that caused kind of you have to manually include these in there. So that was time consuming. It also led to errors with Excel files. So I'm recommending that all funds of the city be included in the software of the city as well, and make sure that that's in place before the end of the year, that all the fund activities accounted for. And one of the main recommendations of Daniel Jones was to, their criteria, the 2018-001, they recommended that management get additional training or hire an outside firm to prepare the financial statements. And I kind of have a twofold recommendation, and this is just my recommendation from the outside looking in. I think because we're so late in the year now, that trying any other course of action but hiring another CPA firm to help with the CAFR is probably the wrong approach due to how close we are to the end of the year. So it's my recommendation that we kind of follow their insight for the 2019 audit, and you either hire, you talk with Botsdeal to see whether or not they will expand the scope of their agreement, because they have probably the most knowledge of the city finances due to how deep they've been in it besides city staff. Another firm would have to come in and have to learn the whole wheel over, and see if you can't get them to prepare the CAFR for the city. At which point Daniel Jones would come in hopefully in May and perform an audit of the financial statements. From talking to the CPA firms, it sounded like there was a change in personnel, and the change in personnel caused there to be a learning curve on the current year audit, that if we were to prepare the CAFR, the prior personnel did a lot of the legwork on the financial statements. The new person did not, or maybe didn't possess, I don't know if they didn't have the skills or they chose not to perform these duties. So a lot of the stuff was ping pong, just going back and forth. That's not our job. That's not our job. Well, you did it last year. Well, you need to do it this year. And so these processes were taking weeks and months and caused just delays on top of delays. So getting one firm to prepare that, I think, would be in the best interest for the 2019 year. Moving forward, after talking to Karen, I believe there's somewhere in the budget, now I'm just kind of talking, in the budget there's a $50,000 budget for a position that's been unfulfilled, like a management type position. That is not going to get you a skilled accountant. I've tried hiring them for 50, they're idiots. So you guys need someone that has an understanding of the gap and all these things. Well, to probably perform the CAFR for this year, you're probably going to need to pay someone $20,000 to do all those responsibilities. So my suggestion would be to complete the audit and then find room in the budget for 2021 to try to add a $70,000 assistant finance director that has an accounting background that can help prepare the financial statements of the city, can provide assistance to Karen, can do these special projects, could possibly be doing what KEB is doing that you're paying for, to have them audit the bonds each month. If you bring someone in with skill, they could probably provide the same type of report because they would have the extra time. You're basically creating a position that would have additional time. You'd probably want to get this person hired at mid-year, and you're saying, well, the budget's only $50,000. Well, half a year, if you budget $50,000 for the whole year and you hire a $70,000 person, there's still enough room in the budget. Then if you look at the next year, you don't hire Botsdeal to prepare the CAFR in 2021. you're not spending that $20,000, you then can reallocate funds to, now, finding this person and doing these things is a whole different ballgame, but 70,000 with the benefits that could be provided by the city, I think could lure away someone that's working 2,400 hours a year in public accounting to a cushier job where they're working 8 to 5 and have some board meetings that they have to go to. You know, like I said, the part of this is a time constraint issue. It's the end of November. To try to hire someone and get them to prepare the CAFR in this time frame is just, I don't see that being very possible. And so I guess I'd look to make sure this doesn't happen again in 2020 when we're doing that audit. I would try to hire a firm, whoever it is, to prepare the entire financial statements and then allow Daniel Jones just to come in and audit. Daniel Jones's fee for the audit, you know, from looking at my stuff I had from a few years ago, was much lower than all the other firms. And I believe their thought process was, we're only going to be coming in and auditing the financial statements, not doing all the other things. So I think that they're probably more than capable, they are more than capable of just coming in and knocking out those financial statements. And you'd want to set up a time frame with whoever you hire. Botsteele, Showalter, Hochschild, Schmerz, whoever you hire in the world, you'd want to say, this needs to be done by April 30th. I don't care how many man hours you need to throw at it. And I guess I'd also recommend that Daniel Jones make sure to throw additional staff, that probably one staff member on and off is probably not the best approach to auditing a city of Brentwood size, that you kind of maybe get an agreement from Al that they're going to send more than, I don't know how many, was it just her most of the time?
For Daniel Jones or?
Daniel Jones, yeah.
There was just, for the most part, her and maybe 2 other people occasionally, and only Al, the principal, once.
I guess I'd talk to Al and say, we're a big job. Will you please make sure that more than one person is here for a few days? Just because it is a drain on city resources to continually require stuff for the audit. It's a horrible approach. That's not the approach I mean, maybe I'm biased, but that's not the approach my firm takes. We get in, we collect all the data, we harass the staff to the point of red face for a few days, and then we leave. And then everything else is small emails and stuff like that. It's not major projects. And staff can prepare for, you get to come here for 1 week and bother us, and then you have to be done by that time frame. And that's not asking too much if you're preparing the financial statements for them. So I think also it's kind of putting the screws to Daniel Jones a little bit and saying, you know, we're going to have the CAFR done for you, but we also want to make sure you have the staff in place, and you're going to set a schedule and keep that schedule. And I think with all that in mind, you'd be able to get the audit knocked out no problem, early. You know.
I had one question,
Yeah.
Keith. In our ordinance, and this was brought up earlier in the year, in our ordinances, it's under the city clerk administrator's duties, but it's the financial part. It says annual report, audited financial statement shall be presented to the Board of Aldermen on or before the 60th day after the close of the year. There's no way, and you know what,
That's a
that can get
different,
done.
that's a different report.
Well, that says audited on there, though.
That's
It's
a
audited
different.
financial
it says-
statements, right there. Should be presented to the Board of Aldermen on or before the 60th day.
So that's impossible.
If
If you remain on the modified if you remain on the accrual basis of accounting, you have a 60-day look-back period. So
Number 10.
if you're doing accrual audit, you have to wait 60 days to look for
Before you
bills
can
that are
even do it,
potential for receivables.
It's 60 days to collect
Yeah.
and post ad valorem.
Yeah. So you know, obviously the city hasn't been following that guideline. And if it was in place, it probably
It wasn't followed before I got here.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
never been followed. I mean, they presented the audit in June the one time I was sitting there, and that was about normal. You expect the audit, to be honest, December year ends are tough on CPA firms because
Tax season.
and they're busy with that, so they're kind of like, hey, we have till June 30th. I'm going to kind of push you off. I'm going to do a few things here and there, but come, May, I'm really going to tackle it, and that's what you kind of want to hope from them. But I guess if that's truly what the code says, I'd probably look into changing the code to say
Cleaning up the
that
code.
6 months, that it must be presented 6 months because that's what the state needs. I mean, that's not what I mean,
Right, that's the state, they want it filed by then. A lot of the compliance for Emma and for the
Yeah.
COPs are 6 months.
yeah, so I mean, I would probably just change it, say by 6 months, because that gives you, but then again, there's no obviously. What's the repercussions for not following it? We've never followed it. I mean,
Right, exactly.
other than being right by the letter of the law.
Right, right.
So, I didn't know if anyone had any questions or,
I would just say this is one of the most specific recommendations we've heard since I've been on the board. It's very concise and I understand it, so thank you.
well, this is my, if there's one thing I can help out with as the city treasurer, which I feel bad for the fire department, I know nothing about investments. I'm going to be a novice and worthless to them, but I will be there helping out if I can. Help with the audit, I can do, check that box. I can do, I can help with that. So, I mean, like I said, it's, trying to at least lay out a twofold plan, because if this was May, my plan would be get someone hired in here that has experience preparing CAFRs and can do this, and then you don't have to have 2 CPA firms or 3 you know. The fact that the city has hired and is paying 3 CPA firms in 1 year, it's kind of crazy to me. I mean, I understand each one's doing their own duties, and you can't, you know, everyone else has different responsibilities, and they all, so, but to me, to have 3 CPA firms, it's not anything wrong, it just, and it always leaves the other CPA firms always wondering, like, someone gonna, you know, like, what are they saying about me? What's this other firm saying about me? You know, am I gonna lose this job because KB's in here saying, you know, you should consider us for the audit. We're really good at auditing, and, you know, makes people insecure. We like to feel secure with these contracts and stuff, so.
So just so I
Yeah.
understand, you don't recommend necessarily changing gears for 2019.
A little bit.
A little bit, but ways that you can pull some levers and get on some people to create a schedule and where
And
things are more
increase-
timely turned around.
Increase the requirements, or expand the scope of what Bots Deal was doing for you, or another firm. It doesn't have to be Bots Deal. I spoke with her. She's still interested in doing stuff for the city. Whether she'd be interested in the next level, they do a lot of.
She is, and
okay.
she will get us a quote. She's out of town,
Okay.
but she will get
They
the
do a
city a
lot of-
quote on the cost to
Okay.
expand the scope.
And
They do a
then-
lot of CAFRs.
Okay.
So that's not something, I've seen their CAFRs. I know that they do a lot of them, and they know what they're doing.
And then down the road, and you're looking at, you're recommending that we have sort of an assistant financial director that might be able to help with this scope, but,
Yeah, and I believe with the with the combination of the new software that enables, that's not 20 years old, combine new software with someone that has GAAP knowledge, GASB knowledge, along with an extra 40 hours a week for the projects that accountants always get pulled in all the different directions, I think that combination should enable you to produce CAFR financial statements next year, to not then have to hire Bots Deal.
and that's something we chew on for the 2021 budget.
Yeah, but you'd have to kind of look and say, you know, hey, then you leave, this admin would have to leave that $50,000 position kind of unfilled, because you'd want that person hired by mid-year to be able to spend the 6 months to get up to
Of
speed.
2020.
Of 2020,
Right.
yeah.
But that's already a line item in the 2020 budget.
Yeah, you just
It's
wouldn't wanna-
it's been an unfilled position, right? I mean, so,
So
okay.
you just want, you know, obviously I can't tell you what to do, but you wouldn't want to fill that one and then say, hey, we need to find an accountant, because then you're saying, well, we don't have the budget for it, and then you're kind of sitting in the same boat that you're in, hiring Bots Deal, which it clearly works, but, you know.
And as far as the expanded scope for getting it done now, we've got money in the budget for that. I mean, that's not gonna be complicating whatever we're doing here today. Okay. Can you comment briefly, people have said to me, and I don't know how to evaluate it, we're good, bad, and different, that perhaps it might be better or easier if we went to a cash basis form of accounting versus accrual.
Yeah.
And if just for
Yeah.
those at home, and for, what, yes,
I
no, why shouldn't we
Yeah,
do
no,
that?
this
Why
is
should
good.
we do that?
You know, ask me accounting questions all day. Everyone will leave, you won't have a budget meeting later. So easier, yes. Moving to the cash basis would 100% be a much easier process overall. The books are cash, revenue, and expenses. It does not get any easier than that. But you do not give the readers of your audit the entire picture of the financial situation. We spoke a little bit, if I bought a dump truck for $300,000 on December 31st, I don't pay for it. I make my books look real good in 2020. In 2019, I pay for it in 2021. I can shift monies around. As I told you, had a school district that collected $1.5 million of revenues in June, but they're for the next school year. When you include those monies in, the school looks like it's financially sound, everything looks great. But really what they've done is they're already spending next year's money in the current year, and you can manipulate the totals when you do cash basis. And I feel as a CPA and as a resident, the accrual basis of accounting gives a fuller picture of the financial status, and all the liabilities. Just because you have $1 million in the bank doesn't mean you have $1 million in the bank. What if you owe vendors $2 million and you're just sitting on cash? The readers and the bondholders would want to know those things. Now I know in speaking to another CPA, they said the cash basis doesn't affect your bond rating. But if you were to go from full accrual to cash, I would have to guess that would impact the bond rating. Now if you were always cash basis and you have a AA bond rating, well, who cares? You've always been cash. But Moody's might be wondering why the city's going from, what has gone on at the city that they're taking their accounting from clean accounting backward. Now something else that the city does is the CAFR, which includes all the statistical data and a bunch of information. I don't believe not doing the CAFR would impact that's just my personal opinion. You can still do a full accrual audit and not have a CAFR, and I don't believe that would impact your ratings. What it would do is it would cause more work for your bond counsel. So they're telling me, don't do that. That's underwriter. That's gonna kill your bond rating. That's not true. The bond rating cares. Do you have an audit? Or is it on time? So that could help save dollars if the city decided to scale back. And maybe that's not a decision for right now, but just something to think about, to scale back from the full CAFR, which has all the statistical and overlapping data, and the last 20, 30 pages of the audit that is just statistical information that causes some of these delays to occur when you're trying to contact the Brentwood School District to ask them for what debt they have, and their accountant doesn't feel like talking with you, and you're trying to reach out to St. Louis County. These cause delays, and really all it's for is for a pretty little certificate that says that you guys have a certificate of excellence.
That's what I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
because if you just do the audited financial statement and not a CAFR,
You won't get the
you cannot submit for the GFO Award of Excellence, correct?
Correct, yes. But I'd have to question, are you going to get the GFOA Excellence Award when we turn our audit in October? If they still give it to you in October, then it's kind of a joke if you ask me. Just because you have the certain schedules in there, if you turn an audit in 4 months later, do you really have excellence in accounting? And I'm not saying that against you, I'm saying the overall audit process. So how important is a certificate that doesn't really reward excellence? To me is turning your audit in on time. I don't know if you're going, you probably applied for it, and I don't know if you got it yet, or so.
Plus it costs $460 to even apply.
I mean, unless you guys are planning on immediately going out and getting another $40 million somewhere, I don't know how important it is to, that's just my opinion. I mean, other people, that's where I would maybe use the multitude of resources that the city has. Talk with Michelle. See, do you think the city needs a full CAFR? Daniel Jones has already said go to the cash basis, so they don't think you need a full CAFR. And because that could help scale back the cost of their services also, if you're not paying for those extra 30 pages in the audit that you don't need.
And then I guess as we go forward,
Yeah.
that's something we can evaluate too,
Yeah.
or that you look at.
Mhm.
Well, great. Do you guys have
I mean, I
any
don't-
other,
yeah, I
any
don't
other
know.
questions?
Thank you.
Do you need any, I'm hearing you're on it. I say go continue at it. I mean, you don't need a motion or anything like that. It's just informational.
The only thing would be to get a expanded scope, and I talked to Michelle yesterday, so she will, if the board is willing to entertain that without asking us to go back out, since we have limited time, right?
Yeah.
So it would be best, your recommendation is to, what,
My
ask-
recommendation is to see if you can get expanded scope on the current engagement with Bots Deal. You put this back out, you got to give it 30 days. You're not going to get it out till the beginning of December. Now we're talking January. Then it needs to go to Ways and Means and hopefully get into the January meeting, which then it means it's got to go to the board in February. Now we're talking March before they're engaged, and we've already now
Right,
caused ourselves a 2-month delay.
right.
Yeah.
I should have that next week, so.
So do you need, I mean, I'd entertain that
If,
motion.
if there's a
that's-
motion supporting that, then what I would do is just take it straight to the board instead of bringing it back to Ways and Means.
How would you like the motion framed?
What he said.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that emotionable?
It is.
No, I guess
not.
if and not that I'm not to step on toes, but just that the committee recommends allowing Bots Deal to bid on an expanded scope, expand the scope of their services to include preparation of the
We
CAFR.
already have
For
a
the year
five-year
of, for the
agreement.
year
2020.
for the year of 2020.
2019,
Or for the
sorry,
2019
2020
budget
audit,
to
yeah.
occur in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like to limit it to that.
Yeah, 'cause you don't want-
Because of your next recommendation.
Yeah.
But we have a 5-year agreement with them, we're in the 4th, which is an optional thing.
Okay, that's fine, but I just want to limit
Right.
this expanded
Yeah.
scope.
2019.
Right.
For the 2019 fiscal year.
Yeah,
That's
fiscal
correct.
year.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. No, so you motion, you second,
No,
then we just
Yes, that was
need,
a motion.
yeah, just
So-
whoever, one of us motioned, one of us
Yeah,
seconded.
that's fine.
Okay.
The women are a blur on that.
Alderwoman Sims.
yeah, yes, yeah, we all sound the same and look the same, apparently.
Mayor's not here, so.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Parker Tice.
Yes,
Okay.
Great, thanks, Keith.
thank you.
If you need anything else, just let me know.
All right, back at the budget. So we left off on Tuesday night. Unless anyone feels strongly, I would think that probably we do police next,
Okay,
or do
sure.
you have? So, so we'll do
Do you know where it
we'll do
is
the
in
police.
there?
If you, Chief, if you care to come on down. You know, and just, you know, it just is a framework to start, if you could begin with, you know, high level, maybe some big ticket items, if there's anything material that, you know, was asked for, not included, you know, that we can begin there, and then certainly we'll open up to questions that the committee has after that.
If it's okay, Major McIntyre is our administrative major.
Sure.
And Jim has done a great job helping
Absolutely.
prepare the budget, so we'll kind of do this together.
Yeah,
if
if
that's
you
okay.
want to tag team, as you like.
But I can start off and kind of address your overall look at our budget. There were a couple big ticket items that were in the budget this year. One of them was the in-car camera program that had been put off a couple years. The in-car camera is something we asked for through the IT budget this year. Currently, it's slotted to be paid for out of Prop P money. So that's one of the biggest ticket items that we have. Another ticket item that we have in capital is vehicles. Our fleet in the police department suffers greatly from day-to-day wear and tear. Obviously, we feel it's extremely important to have vehicles that are safe for our officers for a lot of reasons. And then the last piece of that, of course, is that these officers are in these cars 8, 9, 10 hours a day. It really is their office. And currently, the fleet that we have has really suffered a lot of wear and tear over the last couple of years. So those vehicles, 2 in asset forfeiture, two in Prop P and 2 out of the general budget are slotted as well. As far as something that might catch your attention on our budget, last year we funded several items out of asset forfeiture. Asset forfeiture funding has gone down significantly. Before I got here, shortly before I got here, the officer that was assigned to the DEA task force was brought back to the police department. That resulted in a stop or a loss of funding from DEA for asset forfeiture funding. So really that fund there's money still kind of trickling into it, but we purchased a vehicle this year out of that funding, and it's down to around 23 or 4,000, I believe, right now.
23 something.
Yeah, so you'll see several items that we used last year out of asset forfeiture that are now in the regular budget this year. I guess the last thing I'd like to touch on is there's been a discussion since going back into the fall of 2018 that came out of, the genesis of it was it came out of the Public Safety Committee. Alderman Plufka had asked me in a meeting whether or not we had enough manpower in the police department. That generated a lot of discussion and interest about this topic. There were a couple things that were relative to it. One was retail. Several of the cities around us actually have officers assigned to the retail. Excuse me. We do not here in Brentwood. But really, the thing that, as the chief here and the command staff, the thing that we were most concerned with was nighttime crime in our city. And really, when you look at that, it's prevalent throughout the St. Louis area. So as this thing moved forward into 2019, we really focused on that area of crime in terms of how we would deploy 2 additional officers in 2020. In 2018, at the end of 18, the Public Safety Committee directed that we prepare a study of cities, comparative study of cities around us in terms of manpower. We did that study, provided it to the city administrator, and then on to the Public Safety Committee. If you look at that study, it was, at least in my opinion, it was clear that cities around us had considerably more manpower. And if you look at one that's real close to us, Richmond Heights, they have 41 police officers, where we have 28 positions. That's just an example, but it was a common theme out of the cities that are around us. So as we look to do the budgeting, we are well aware that additional people are expensive and they're ongoing costs. So when you look at the cost of 2 additional officers, it's around $180,000 depending on who we hire. And those folks hopefully don't go away, so they're year-to-year costs. And because of that, when we had our discussions with the city administrator and the finance director, we really were looking at 2 choices here in terms of keeping our levels consistent to where it was, or going up 2 officers with the intention of putting them into a night watch patrol plan that would affect that nighttime crime problem that we have, and we're certainly not the only city that has it. So at this point, the budget that you have has us at the strength of 28 officers and 1 administrative person. So that's what you're looking at in our budget. Any questions on any of that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman
Okay.
Tice.
Thank you. So my first question is about whether there are 2 additional officers or not. I understand that you're down, there's 2 open positions and somebody's about to leave to go to the FBI.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and I also understand there are issues with hiring at the fire department too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you anticipate how do you anticipate being able to fill these positions? How are you going to address that?
Well, based on the status of our society, law enforcement generally is very difficult to hire quality people at this point. So we have Major Hawkins and Jason Coates have done all kinds of different tactics to try but you have to keep in mind that all of the municipalities in St. Louis County, the city's down 136 people as we speak. So this is a pool of applicants now it's a very contested pool. Having said that, we currently have, Jason, where we have 3 people, 4. So we currently have 4 people to put in. They have to go through testing, they have to be interviewed, the whole thing that we do. So it's a difficult process for us right now to hire. But we are recruiting hard, we're trying, and obviously we're trying to be inclusive. One of the officers that retired this year, Lieutenant Phelps, is an African-American officer, so we'd love to be able to plug back in a couple of folks that would help us. But right now we close on the 30th of November, that closes. So we're hoping to get 2, we currently have 2 positions open, and we're hoping to fill those. Hopefully by the end of the year. Jason will probably be back there giggling about that, but we're going to try. The officer that's leaving is going to the FBI. Nick Nielsen has been hired by the FBI as a special agent, so he leaves January 4th. And we hate to lose Nick, he's a really good policeman, but so we'll be open again in January.
Are there additional costs to hiring 2 employees other than salary, like a car or other equipment?
Yeah, obviously there's benefits, so you have that as well. Yes, there is. There's uniform costs. So it costs, Jim, help me out here, around $7,000 to outfit a policeman initially? With the vest, radios, is that roughly?
Yes.
So roughly with a new miniature radio, bulletproof vest, gun, uniforms, it's around $7,500 per officer just to get them on the street. Right.
But are you anticipating needing an additional car or anything, or is this?
No, we would not need an additional car based on those 2 officers being hired. No.
I have more, but may I keep going?
Continue.
So, what's the miscellaneous contractual expense that's gone up 48,000?
So that's part of what I mentioned in the beginning of this in terms of what we paid for last year.
Okay.
So Jimmy, we'll kind of break that piece down.
What's in that large number? So it wasn't a big description.
The largest piece of that number, the miscellaneous contractual, just so we're on the same page, we're looking at the line item.
It's at 6210.
6210. The largest piece of that is East Central Communications. So their budget year is April. I believe it's April to May, and ours, unfortunately, is January to January. So we have to kind of make a real close, educated guess on what we think their budget's going to look like based on some estimates that they give us. So we generally try to make sure that we're not going to fall short. I think in 2017 we were a little short. We didn't realize that their budgeting plan had jumped that high. So that's the biggest portion of why that increase is in there.
And then
And also, Jim, their fiscal year is not ours.
Correct.
So June 30th, when they decided, which is the middle of our fiscal year, to jump, to increase.
And just so you know, that's a floating number, like Jim mentioned, and they charge us, currently they charge us by call for service.
No interest.
We're over 25,000 radio calls at this point for the city of Brentwood. That's high compared to other cities in ECDC. So each event we are charged. So this is a floating number for us. The one thing that we did do was we call on contract patrols a lot with this patrol plan we have. And we were concerned that the number of calls that we were being charged for did not include the contract patrols because they shouldn't be. That's self-initiated activity. Anyway, so we have audited with the ECDC on 2 occasions, and we went back through and made sure that we weren't being charged for those. So our radio calls continue to go up each year. So.
And Nancy, just as, for both of you, if you would just call out the page number you're on.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Okay.
so that, well, I can follow along, but those at home can follow along too.
Okay, so I'm still on page 153. And then your training budget's way up. I'm just curious it's up from a budgeted, it's up 40, from budgeted 5,800 to just shy of 25,000. So if I'm reading across the line, right?
So last year we we used asset forfeiture for nearly $20,000 for training. This year we've zeroed that line item out. So all of the training now is all lumped into one now. So that's why you see the big increase. There's no more asset.
So it's apples to apples, and what you're spending, it's just not on the.
Correct. One was taken out of the asset forfeiture account. One was taken out of the smaller number was taken out of our regular account. That asset forfeiture account is no longer there.
And the supplies and materials, 6420, has a percentage jump. Is that because new officers would need?
It's more the asset forfeiture. We used to use we used a line item in asset forfeiture for supplies and materials. For example, our CALIA stuff, that sort of thing. All of that now is budgeted in one account instead of 2.
So it's just rearranging.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Just
Do you
one
have some
quick thing.
comment?
I think, Chief, you mentioned 2 cars were out of asset forfeiture and 2 out of, they're not. They're all out of regular capital because of the CALIA, the emergency manager position and the evidence technician and that we're taking out of Prop P. That's coming out of your regular budget, but earmarked for Prop P. Therefore, the 4 cars over in the capital side was changed to just pure capital. It has nothing to do with Prop P. So,
Thank you, Karen.
just wanted to make that clear. And then you said the budget they had how many officers in it? What they're looking at right now? It should be just your regular, it does not have the 2 additional in it.
Yeah, it should be 28.
28 plus
Right.
the one
Yes, ma'am.
administrative person.
Right.
Yep.
And then the 2 new is 160 total, not, correct?
It
With
depends.
benefits.
Well, it depends on where you bring them in, at what
Correct.
level.
So it could
The
it be
city
anywhere?
administrator, Bola, has allowed us with experienced officers to bring them in at a higher level, which
Right, but
we
it's
need to
still
be able to do
probably
the higher
only,
level.
if they didn't come in at the, this is the higher level. They could come in less, 160, so.
If we hired somebody coming out of the police academy, to Karen's
Right.
point, it would be lower because they'd come in at the first
At the
level, first
bottom,
step.
right.
One more question.
Hold on.
This is a service question. Looking at the reports with the vapor trails of the cars, often there are cars which are just doing main streets. Would having the extra officers be able to give a little more service more often to those streets that are sort of neglected right now?
Especially at night, I mean, when you start looking at our crime patterns, a lot of, almost all of our car break-ins are happening at night. So the answer to your question, yes. We would be able to, and cautious to tell you that 2 additional officers isn't solve all our problems, right? Cops are everywhere, it's common sense. But if you put 4 fishermen in a boat instead of 1, you get a better chance of catching fish. So we would be able to cover the streets more thoroughly and saturate areas that we've identified where there's problems. Yes.
I don't have any other further questions either. That was
Thank you.
Thank you.
nice and succinct. All right.
I'm sorry, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure. So I guess we'll take a 5-minute break.
So, back at 106.
So my question, and I'll just do the question and answer. I asked a question about 62 lines on page 79, line 6220 festival expense, and why it was new in 2018 actual, and apparently it used to be done.
Eric, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so the festival expense it originated in community relations in sometime in the 90s, sometime in 2000 it went into Fund 50 for a short time, and then the decision was made to move it back into community relations. So for a short time it was in Fund 50 for a while.
Sure. This is, but just, you weren't here for this. We're trying to blow through some of the smaller stuff. And right now we're in administration, and she was talking about community services. So she only had one question. So if you have something about that, by all means ask. But I just wanted to make sure that you know where we were. Yeah.
Can you envision a point where we need to look at Brentwood days and charge something so that we have more revenue coming in and it's not all outgo?
That is a committee question that has been asked multiple times. That is, I think, something that the board has to tackle, to be honest.
What is the question?
Charging admission
It
to
came
the,
up
to
being
Brentwood.
the-
So
being a
that was taken up at the,
Public
do you want to
Works.
address that?
Well, the
long-term.
the Public Works took it up at this year's
Meeting.
committee, Alderman Lockmuller's here, and the discussion was that because so many people shop in Brentwood and contribute to the tax base, that we would keep it free for this year for,
So it will not be a revenue expense in the near future.
It's been brought up 3 times since I've
Yes.
been here.
Thank you.
And so, does that conclude the sort of administration topic of the budget? Do you have any other questions on that subject matter? Okay, and so judicial does not present,
No.
so we can check that off. Are there any questions on in the legislative department?
No.
That maybe we can tackle in short order?
I only tapped some of them, so.
That would be page, I'm trying to
Where's legislative? Oh,
knock out the
okay.
smaller things, so.
Where's legislative?
Legislative is on page 98.
Oh, 98, I'm going back, okay. Just going to know. Yes, they are. No.
Okay.
I mean, if you have questions for judicial, I'm happy to
Yeah, no, I
forward
mean,
it to
and
the
again,
judge.
By all means, I want to make sure your questions are asked and answered, but I'm trying to see if we could,
No.
No.
we don't feel like you need to make up a question if you don't have one. Okay, and so with that, we will turn to Parks and Rec. And I'd take some feedback. I think of Brentwood Bound as being under Parks and Rec.
No, I
So-
mean, it shows up under Parks and Rec, but really it's under administration.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
under I oversee the project.
I'm thinking just so,
In terms of the budget?
that, well, no, in terms of organization of questions
Oh.
only.
So
that
he
should we-
can't answer
should we
any
do-
Brentwood bound questions. Craig and I would do that, and he's not here.
Please ask, I won't answer any.
Okay, so we don't,
So don't ask Brentwood bound
we don't
questions
have,
today.
we don't have someone that can answer Brentwood bound
Right.
questions. So we have Parks and Rec questions,
Right.
non-Brentwood bound.
Right.
Okay.
So, with that, again, Eric,
Great.
high-level summary, big-ticket items,
Sure.
things not on, and then we'll kick into questions.
I have a few things. I mean, the one thing is, as you guys just mentioned, Fund 50 is a little bit harder to decipher, obviously, because of the inclusion of Brentwood Bound. But beyond that, our goal in Parks and Recreation is to bring forward a balanced budget. We've done that. Since 2013. Our goal is always to kind of budget and deliver a year-end increase in fund balance. That's always our goal. This practice did allow us to cash fund $2 million for the renovation of the Brentwood Recreation Complex. I'll talk a little bit about revenue, just because our revenue is a little bit different than the rest of the cities. If you do look at revenue on page 118, it does fluctuate a little bit from year to year. Two main reasons for this is the first is weather, and that usually typically only fluctuates year end. So if you see a little bit downturn in revenue, it's usually sports or park permits, and that usually is completely due with weather. So this year in particular, we had a lot of rain in the spring and early summer, so you saw park permits and sports leagues go down because we had a lot of cancellations, things like that. The other big fluctuation is anytime we have to do yearly maintenance for the ice rink. We did not close down the ice rink this year because of we want to make sure we're open for the centennial. We do have to go down next year. We usually go down every other year in the ice rink, make sure all the systems get a good check, make sure we clean out the sand, things like that. And so you see maybe a little bit downtick in revenue because of that. But basically, the other thing is fees and charges account for over $1 million of revenue for the department. That's been a steady increase of almost $200,000 since 2013. So we have seen an uptick in revenue and fees and charges from the department. So that's a good thing. Going to expenditures, which start, I believe, on 119. Personnel services, the entire line did see a 7% increase, again, for two main reasons. The first is Missouri minimum wage increase. So Missouri minimum wage increase from $816,945 in 2020. This is a 9.88% increase. Skate guards is our biggest minimum wage user, so they basically start out at minimum wage, so we have to increase all their salaries. We also have other positions like building managers who start a little bit higher, but because the skate guards are coming in at a higher increase, we recommend moving them up so that there's not that compression. We also see other market jobs around us, the similar type jobs in Clayton and Richmond Heights, and all of our like jobs are starting those type of positions higher, so we want to move those up. And then if you look at places like Target and McDonald's, they're also starting those positions higher, so if we don't push that job a little bit higher, we're not going to find those people to help us out with those building managers. The other is our full-time salary line increased a little bit. And the big reason for that is the federal government raised the threshold for employees to earn overtime from $23,660 to $35,568. So we have 8 exempt employees in primarily the recreation side. So those are people who run programming for the department. So we had 2 that fell underneath the threshold, the assistant program coordinators. And we talked to Jason, and Jason talked to Linda Higbee, and the suggestion made from Linda was reclassify the assistant program coordinator position to program coordinators, and reclassify the program coordinators to recreation supervisors. So that's what we showed in the budget. And I don't know if Jason has any additions to that, or if anyone has any questions to Jason about that aspect of it. If not, I'll move on, or if you have questions.
I was trying to remember if we had talked about this and then as a board had said no, and we did not want the hires because of financial concerns, but renaming the position does the same.
We,
has the
we
same
do that
result.
throughout the year. That's what we're trying to do in administration with the finance assistant, finance director. So as a matter of practice, anytime that there is a vacancy, we take another look at the duties and responsibilities of that position. We try to see, okay, is there gaps in level of service? So that is what we try to do. But what we brought to the board earlier was it a reclassification, or wasn't a reclassification?
No, it wasn't reclass, it's moving.
It was
with
moving salary.
Moving grids.
Moving positions on the salary grid.
Yeah.
This is completely different.
Okay,
And this is based on federal law,
okay,
so.
thank you.
Now, if you have any questions for Jason, he's the one who,
May I ask if the positions that we talked about at the board meeting that you were wanting to move the grid, were they these positions?
they are.
So it's a different way around the same.
Well, but we had no control over federal law changing regarding how you calculate overtime.
Yeah, the two positions in question were the assistant program coordinators. They started at $28,000. They're currently an exempt level position. Going forward, they would not be allowed to be exempt, which would mean we would have to completely restructure the manner in which those individuals work. We'd have to put them on a different pay cycle and an inordinate number of issues with regards to that. So the easiest thing to do was to simply move them to the next highest threshold, which is what we did. And by classifying them as program coordinators in lieu of assistant program coordinators, it more closely represents the actual work that they're doing per the discussion that we had with Linda Higby to begin with. So it's more, it brings them in line with what their job actually is with our comparator cities, and has the secondary factor of hitting the thresholds that are required by federal law.
So cost-wise, is it more cost-effective to put them at a higher level and not pay them overtime? Or would they still get overtime at the program coordinator level?
That, I mean, it's very similar because the amount of time that we work in the field, I mean, we've had a lot of comparable cities who've done different ways. And what typically happens is that you have one of two different things, is that you either make them clock in and clock in and basically hit the 40 hours and then you lose productivity, or you basically pay the extra amount and you pay more for the overtime. So I've seen both ways. My counterparts in different cities have talked about different ways, is that you lose them because they've worked their 40 hours to basically Thursday, and then you lose them on Friday, or you're paying the extra amount that you would have paid them to jump them up to the extra level in overtime. So it's half dozen one or the other, basically.
So will they now be exempt when you moved them?
They're exempt now. If we move them, they will remain exempt.
Okay. And not eligible for overtime?
Correct.
More questions on that?
Not on that.
Not yet, but-
Okay, so I continue.
It's which is why we're bringing it up, because it is kind of it's something that we were talking about, 2 years ago, and they didn't actually make that change. And we aren't expecting them to make the change, but I guess the federal government pulled the trigger on it this year, late this year. So material supplies, if you look there's no significant changes. Contractual, there's just a few. The biggest being the Richmond Heights Cooperative. I'll be honest, there is when we did the budget in July, we're looking at numbers of a little bit higher, and if we continue to work with them, I expect those to continue to go down.
Can I interrupt and ask a question related to that? You have phased out 6127.
Just also, please just be sure to call out the question, the page number that you're on.
Okay,
So
page 120, 6127 was the senior program, which has been eliminated, so that there is no indication of how much we are paying to Richmond Heights. If you have added that into the co-op fee, I would like to see that broken down. What does Brentwood pay for memberships versus what are we paying someone? I will talk to Public Works, I think, later about the philosophy behind this. I'm not sure the program is working, and I really don't want to see it funded this next year as it stands now. But I think if you're closing out a fund, it needs to be broken down into the fund you're putting in, which is 6310.
So, could you repeat that? 6120, which is on page?
6127, we're on page 120.
Okay.
6127 has the fees, the zero entry.
Yes.
There is a lump sum apparently added to 6310, which I assumed was simply the fees, membership fees that we were talking
No,
about.
6310 talks about that it
6310.
includes both because the rationale of moving the, both the membership fee and the agreement for the intergovernmental agreement for senior citizens recreation program services was that they're both the cooperative. So that's why it's in there. It's in the text.
So you want it separated?
I would like it
Okay.
separated. I
We
think
can
the
do that.
membership is
Can't we?
one thing and program
Can't
is
we do
something.
that?
Yeah, I just assumed this was membership, so I didn't
Okay.
even I didn't fully comprehend
Sure.
it.
So we can separate it, right?
We can. I mean,
Okay.
if that's what we want to do.
Yeah. We can separate that in the narrative and
And in the funding.
in
I
the
think it should
funding.
come in separate funds.
Okay, so what this shows is an expense, right? So
Right.
what I'm hearing is she wants that to still show where it was showing before.
Well, we've never had, this year's first year we had last year, all right, I think 2019 is the first year we had the full year of the expense, and it was in 6310. So if you'd like it in a different account number line, we could put it back into
6127.
being contractual, right, which would be, I think it should be contractual, which would be 60,
We haven't had
It's-
expenses
yeah,
in that account number 6127 since 2017.
right, so.
Last time we had it was $786.
So we can still show it, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd have to change
So
it
we'll
to
You
show
have
it.
to change the budget and give
Well-
it to me.
We can change it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, 6127, contractual
Okay.
would be the.
That's my
Was that the only
question.
one? Okay.
And then as far as capital, I'm not sure if you guys want me to go through each project or if you just have certain ones, but I'm happy to do whichever way you'd like it
I
to.
guess, if you could do some of the big items
Sure.
and then,
So the idea
any
is,
questions on specific.
Brentwood Park, since MSD is finally going to be out of Brentwood Park, there's a number of projects down there that have been waiting. So the parking lot and pathway project, that asphalt is deteriorating completely. We'll package that with the street project, so hopefully we'll get better pricing on that. The pavilion and the park restroom. The thing about both of those is since those are both in floodways, the issue is that you can't just tear those down and rebuild them, so you have to work within the confines of the existing building. And so the pavilion is basically there's lots of issues with that pavilion. The restroom, as part of the master plan, was to see if that building could be renovated to add either additional bathrooms, including a family restroom, or additional storage. And the idea of doing a feasibility plan is to see if it's worthwhile and cost-effective. You don't want to throw money into it if you can't do it. But the current bathroom is not ADA accessible, neither one are ADA accessible, but the roof has to be replaced next year. So we want to replace the roof and then see if we can do anything with the bathrooms and make sure if it's feasible. Yes.
Quick question with that. We paid for design for the Oak Tree Park Pavilion. Is there any reason we could not use the same plan for the Hanley Pavilion and avoid the design fees?
Yes and no. If you're going to the Hanley one, A lot of the fees, the vine fees, if you're talking about the Hanley Park is that within each site, you still have a lot of work that has to be done because it's site specific. So there's geotechnical work. If you come to any of the public works when we've talked about design, is that all the parks at one point in the past have been used for dumping, concrete, asphalt, other things. So I think in every project we've done since I've been here, there's been unsuitable soils. So you have to do geotechnical work to see what's underneath the soil to figure out what you're getting into. So every design work, you have to do that sort of geotechnical work. Because every park is in the floodplain or floodway, you have to do, because of our ordinances, you have to do floodplain permitting and MSD permitting. You have to do a no-rise flood study. You have to do a floodplain letter of map provision. So you have to do all that no matter, even if you still use that same sort of design. The concept of what we'd like to do is like to make most of our pavilions look similar. So yeah, there is an economy of using that similar design of what's an oak tree, because that's what we'd like to do. So, but you can't just say, we're just gonna take this package and redesign and basically bid that out. You still have to do all the site work stuff, which unfortunately costs money.
All right, thank you.
So, and the additional part of that too is the fact that part of it is to expand that parking lot, because if the other thing came out during a lot of the master plan is that our parks don't have a lot of parking. And so that would be one of the things that we was not part of the original oak tree thing, was to add additional parking for that site-specific area. So that's that program there. The Hanley Park Court Improvement Lighting Project, that's adding lights to the current project. We actually talked about that in Public Works. Memorial Park Busy Bee design, that's the same thing. There's the site-specific parts that we have to do.
Plead ignorance, what's a busy bee?
The Busy Bee is I'm sorry.
I have children, I'm not married. What happens at these places?
Sorry.
It's the little kids.
It's as you walk into Memorial Park where the bathrooms are, it's always been called the Busy Bee. I'm not sure why.
Oh, it's where the bathrooms are.
I never heard it called that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, when we redo it, we'll probably call it something else. But yeah, because I think that's right. The name when they used to have the daycare out there, that's what they used to call it. So.
Okay. Please continue.
The dingo, we're going to bring some native animals back to Memorial Park. Just kidding. No. So
Ate your baby.
the dingo is a piece of park maintenance equipment. The thing is that it's a piece of equipment that we don't currently have and that we rent on I didn't say regular basis, but a frequent basis. We've rented it $5,000 this year, and it does things like lifting materials, grading soil, removing sod, spreading materials, scraping flood debris. The scraping of flood debris, when you think about Brentwood Park and the amount of times that we've had to be down there, if we in the new or the new Brentwood bound location, things like that, digging post holes when we talk about putting in fencing and things like that, that would be nice.
So would you estimate that you've got like a $5,000 worth of rental that you for that? I mean, I know $32,000. That's one, the name, and then two, the cost. You know, as far as you think you would rent that often every year.
We would. I mean, it not every year, but there's stuff that we haven't done with it. So we mulch the trails in Memorial Park every year, and we basically have to take a dump truck. We take our truck. A regular truck basically 30 times back and forth because we can only get one load of a time. We could actually basically get a bigger load because we can then use the dingo to move it across the thing and maybe some efficiencies of time there. The other thing that this would do if we're allowed to get it with the attachment is we could actually start planting trees ourselves. We'd be able to take that cost away from Davy Tree because it'd have the attachment of we could actually dig the holes and start planting trees. So there are things that we don't rent it for currently now that we'd start being able to do ourselves. So it's a lot of things, efficiencies and things like that. So that's that one. The lawnmower replace it is basically we mow a lot of grass. The truck is replace it, and then the survey services is what we did. We split costs, half in my budget and half in the capital budget. So that is, I'm happy to answer a lot of questions.
Who wants to go first?
I don't
You
have
two.
any further questions.
Okay,
No,
so
I do.
Nancy, take it away. And if, again, just, it's
So
like being in a
I'm on-
deposition, just say
I'm
the
on
page
page
number.
119, and I'm looking at the salary line. So,
Which number, so,
total
6,000?
salary, I'm looking at the line, the subtotal line below 6070.
Okay.
And so, as you already stated, you sort of explained why it went up from last year, but I'm really curious why why salaries have gone up from actual 2018, almost 20%.
And again, we've talked about Missouri, the big thing is you're talking about the Missouri minimum wage increase, 2 straight years. So Missouri minimum wage is going to increase for multiple years from now on. So that's going to, for your part-time lines, those are going to be your biggest increases. So that's why a lot of the part-time lines have been increasing. The full-time lines have been basically going up 3% each year. You'll see the increase for next year based on what we talked about with Jason.
Okay, so, but $285,000 worth of part-time people and a salary? I mean, are your I don't have number of employees from 2018. Did you hire new people for the century celebration, and then are they not?
So it's a combination of things. It's full-time salaries, merit increase that's budgeted, and then you add up all the part-time salaries.
The other thing, which I'm sorry, I failed to mention, is that we actually, if you look at 2018, your rink program staff, you notice how rink programming, again, it's delta's about $20,000, but we went from a in-house hockey official line to contractual. So all of our hockey officials went from in-house to contractual, so that.
So then that leaves us with 265.
Sorry,
I mean, it's just a
another one.
lot, it's a huge number increase on salaries in 2 years in one department that has 21 employees.
Well, some of it, when you talk about actual to budget, is we're talking about, we do have some times where we have.
You have open positions.
Right,
so
open
that's-
positions,
yeah.
so, and if you look at staffing the last few years, and we talked about this when we talked about last time, is we've had a number of open positions due to a lot of the things we talked about, back when we talked about trying to raise salaries. So I've had a lot of open full-time positions. So when you talk about actual to budget, I'm budgeting to be fully staffed for the entire year, where I can name at least 1 or 2 full-time staff people who've been gone for an extended period of time throughout 18 and 19. So right now, I currently have 2 staff people I have 2 staff vacancies right now. So in 18, we had 2 or 3 for an extended period of time.
So are you getting your park work done without these people?
No, I mean, it's a struggle to keep up, but we do the best we can.
I mean, you're 100,000 up from budget, and then 285 up from actual from 2 years ago. It just seems like huge percentages, different from any other department.
Eric, when did parks go from public works to you, or no? They went to parks. They went from you. Didn't public works
to
people
parks.
go over to you?
No, that was in 16,
It was?
so.
I guess since we're meeting again Monday, I would be sort of curious what the differences are from 18 to now. It's just such a large number, 280,
We can provide more detailed
286,000.
information.
Yeah, I would be curious to see the difference. I have more questions. On the next page, page 120, line 6126, recreation program special events. I had sort of, when I looked at this, now I knew, so I looked at this, and I looked at the budget line for 20, went up 10,000 from 18. And I just assume, oh, you know, when I look at this, I'm like, oh, special event is that century, additional century things, but then it's even up now $2,000, $17,000 proposed for 2020. So what is that special event line?
Yeah, it is events for, so last year, obviously, we bumped it up for the centennial. And obviously what we found is that people enjoyed a lot of the events. So what we're trying to do is continue the momentum we had. And so we increased from, not increased from last year, but we increased from the previous years and trying to keep some of those events. So if you're 6126, I believe is what you said. Sorry, let me get to, so I can give you exact some of the things that we talked about. So we have things like, so the Sweetheart Dance, music on the menus is part of that. Movie at the Firehouse, we have to buy the movies. Party in the Patch. And then what we're really trying to do is one of the community celebrations, so like the Pizza in the Park, which was a really big event, but it's a free event. And then we're trying to keep one of the other big ones. So this year we're going to do the foam party again, which was a hugely popular one, but that is a fairly expensive event. So we're trying to keep that, and because we can fit it within our budget, give back to the community in that way. So.
Well, I mean, I think that's great to have all those events. It just seems like last year was so great, and then if you're only going to keep some of them, and it's still gone up $2,000.
But we're trying to combat that with sponsorship as well. So we're trying to increase our sponsorship line as well a little bit to help with those events.
Advertising. So this is line 6160. So I'm still, I sort of am looking back at 18 to 19, because there was a big jump in a lot of things there, and I wasn't here, and I would just assume that was for the centennial. Like advertising's gone up from last year from 12,007 to 14. It's not a huge increase, but why is advertising gone up?
Sure. What we're trying to do is continue to find different ways to advertise, and one of the big push for our advertising team. We really don't have a team. We have two people. Molly, who's our operations superintendent, and Amber, who's our new special events and marketing person, would like to do is they asked to put in park kiosks, so bigger park kiosks where you can actually put some signs up there, get some better wayfinding along there. And so we added that in there for this year. We added some additional dollars for some retractable banners that you've been seeing around the things that people have started noticing our events. So we've increased the advertising budget for those couple of reasons right there. Again, that was the reason.
Well, it's just up, like that's another one, it's up 10,000 from 2 years ago, so I just question the large expense.
Don't move on, can I explain the kiosk? This is an outdoor kiosk?
Yeah, it's an outdoor kiosk that, whether it's two-sided or three-sided, one side could be a map of the park and especially wayfinding around the park. Another side would be basically upcoming events. A third side could be, hopefully it's something with more city-related, whether it's, something police-related, something fire, sustainability, something like that.
And where would this be located?
That we wanted to make sure we got through the budget process first before we went too crazy, but we're looking at different places throughout the parks, one in each park, but we're really focused on one or two. Memorial Park, the easiest places as you converge either to the inline rink or down to the parks.
So this is a want item, sort of like, gee, it'd be nice to have this. It's not that there's been a request for this sort of.
I think, it's not if you think about whether it's needed, the idea is that we're trying to, again, create more knowledge about what's going on in the park.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm getting into little lines, but like printing, more than, it's about doubled. This is line 6375.
Printing is.
So why are we printing in the world of online?
Printing, the big cost for printing is for the brochure, and the brochure cost has gone up from last year. And industry standard says that still 65% of people get their information from your brochure. So.
Seems like I had explain the 6280 birthday party expense? What is that?
That is all the items that we need for our birthday parties on the ice rink. So paper products, so your napkins, your plates, your forks, your
So these are people who rent out to have
Yep.
birthday parties.
So they pay for it, and then we basically provide the small things like that.
And then I think my last question is, at the full Board of Aldermen meeting last week, we talked about potentially adding a fence at Memorial Park.
Yeah.
And where is that? And then
Sure.
could there, along with that, presumably, I don't know if there's money that's needed to have a discussion about what kind of fence makes sense, and does it make sense to have just a partial fence? Does it make sense to have a full fence? Does it make sense to have a fence at all? I mean, I know that's a committee level question, but does it cost to study that, or is that something you can do?
I don't think there needs to be a study of that. I think we take the discussion from Public Works and then just implement that.
Okay, perfect.
So it's in Materials, Supplies, and Parks, 6421. I know that it's 100,000, so it's a big thing, but any sort of park project that's not considered a capital project, we have a park
21,
park project
6421.
list, and it's in there.
Wait a minute, where's 6421?
On page 119,
119.
6421. So that fence would come out of that
Yep.
fund, or that line.
So I guess we could revisit the salaries, and then I may have
Yes,
to
we'll
wrap my
bring
head
that
around
back
this
on
kiosk
Monday.
thing too. So,
Is there a follow-up that needs to happen on the other questions you asked, like marketing and advertising and birthday party? Or are you comfortable with his response?
I mean, it's a lot of money that we're adding. Are we getting that many? I guess I would appreciate some information about.
We'll bring additional information
Just
on.
additional information, what those mean.
Okay.
If we're getting increased people for those dollars.
What we'll probably do with a lot of the questions that require follow-up is once we have them, we'll push them out
Perfect.
prior to the
Right,
next
yeah,
meeting.
great. And I guess I have still have one last question. On page 109, the performance measures. So can you explain the percentage cost recovery for all programs?
Yeah, so we basically, one of the things we look at is we look at how much revenue we get based on the expenditures we pay for programs. And so there are some programs that in the theory of Parks and Recreation, you look at an inverted pyramid of programming. So there are some programs that are a community benefit that you don't expect to make as much money for, and throwing things like skate lessons. So you want to basically break even. There's some that are highly specialized that you expect that will be a little bit more expensive and pay a little bit more, and those are private skating lessons, those type of things. And so that's kind of how we kind of plan our cost recovery. And so this just tracks where we are throughout the entire year.
So. it
Special
seems-
events brought us down this year.
Yeah, so it's,
So, because we track special events too.
it seems that we used to recover more than the cost of programs to the tune of 134% 2 years ago, and this year we're at 77%, next year we're going down to 66%. So clearly there's a lot more expenses in here that we're not recovering for the programs we're having.
And again, what I said, the thing is special events. When we talk about providing a couple free events for the community, that's what brings it down.
Yeah, but if we did it this year,
And
then it's, I mean, I'll have to look at the revenue line again to see why the math is like that, but it seems, we had such amazing events this year, and to think that we're gonna recover even less money next year when we had such a, I mean, you didn't, it sounds really negative here, like, the parks, the stuff that was done this year was awesome, and I have a lot of younger kids, and they didn't go to all the things, but they really enjoyed it, so I applaud all the work that was done with you and your team to provide those things for our citizens. But I just think we need to be thoughtful about the cost of those things and about how many people are coming and the value
And we are. I mean, and like I said when I started, I mean, we are very conscientious about bringing in an increase our net bottom line, and I've done that every year. I mean, it is my goal, like I said, to continue to do so. We added $50,000 to stormwater this year because we know there are stormwater projects that need to get done with that throughout the city. We continue to do that so that we build a fund balance. It's impossible to see because of Brentwood Bound. But we did that, and we're able to cash fund $2 million for this renovation. We're able to take money out of the fund balance for stormwater projects. And it's because of being fiscally responsible and being looking at our budgets and having staff who are dedicated to that same principle. So I'm not trying to.
If the board thinks that there's a threshold that we need to obtain or target, it'd be nice to know what that is.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, being new to this and new to part, like, I don't know what a threshold should be. It's such a change in 2
I mean, do you
years.
want it 100%? Do you
Well,
want it 90, 80?
what kind of programs could we provide? Like, how do we compare ourselves to other cities who provide great programming? Do other cities provide similarly fabulous programming and recapture 100%? I don't know, like, I don't know anything to compare it to, so.
Yeah, we can provide that information, and a good example would be the Heights. I think that organization understands that they're not going to do cost recovery 100% of that cost. Therefore, that's why they have partnership with us. And some of them they have partnership with businesses in our town as well. So it just really depends on the philosophy of the board. Do you never expect to have 100% recovery, but 70% would be ideal. But we can definitely show programs that we have in comparison to others. But the exception is the fact that we had a centennial year. And
Right, but
we can
the exception,
reassess
so
it.
I sort of went into this thinking, oh yeah, it was a centennial year, so it's not gonna be as much, and almost everything was more.
Right.
So that's sort of that's what I found.
We'll provide a response.
Yep, thank you.
I'm a little confused about the Centennial Foundation paying for some things and Parks paying for some things. I had obviously wrongly assumed that there would be everything sourced out of the Centennial Fund, but it looks as though you have done some things independently without being part of the Centennial Fund. Do we get an accounting eventually of?
So there were funds in the community services section of administration. 25,000 or 20?
25.
How much was it?
Yeah.
20, okay. 20,000 that the board allocated to the Brentwood Centennial Foundation to help them pay for all their programming, which is completely different from the programs that the city put on, which were funded out of the Parks Department and the Stormwater Fund and Improvement.
So it's not duplication?
So it's different things, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm finished.
I am too.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
So what is left in terms of just so I have an idea of what Monday's gonna look like?
What is left would be Brentwood Bound.
Brentwood Bound, okay.
And Eric's really glad he's not answering those questions.
I mean, obviously,
So,
but
unless and I haven't heard that you are recommending any changes other than where we left off at the last meeting to find funds to pay for the 2 additional officers.
I want to be ready with answers.
Right.
That becomes.
That's it.
I just don't want it to be at the board level and they're like, I'm going to make an oral motion to do that. I mean, I would like to be ready for.
So you have a chance to do that.
Um,
What's the next meeting, the 25th?
It's the 25th,
So,
the
yeah.
public safety will not have met. So, I mean, I just wanted to have something in the wings
So public safety
deal with.
meets 30
day
minutes
after.
before, is it?
Right,
25th.
Steve? Aren't we doing it on
When
the
is this?
26th?
Is Tuesday, this one's Tuesday?
We're doing it Tuesday.
Public safety's Tuesday.
But safety
No,
is
it's been
Tuesday.
changed to the 25th. I thought I
What?
saw an email. It's been changed to the 25th.
So the same day.
What's the 25th?
Public Safety Committee meeting at 5:30?
So right,
Yeah.
so right before Ways and
So will
Means?
we have something, I mean, if I got another budget with all that stuff cut out, it would need to be line item to red line or something.
Yes, it will be.
Okay, good.
Whoa, what did we just say? I'm listening to them.
Well, there was a request for a recommendation to fund 2 additional police officers. So the request was that police and fire meet and give you
Right.
an option. So we're gonna have to share that information with them.
Right.
Right.
So not Ways and Means. The public safety's meeting the same day.
The
right now?
25th at 5:30.
So before Ways and Means?
So
Okay.
all that's gonna come out of that committee, I think, is a
No,
recommendation to public safety.
We're at 6.
We're
I
meeting
have-
at 4 o'clock.
Oh, we
Oh,
are
that's
meeting at
right.
4
We're
o'clock.
meeting at
Oh, are
4.
we?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what
Wait.
we set up,
Oh,
which is good.
Wait, I have Ways and Means is starting at 5. Is it 4? 4's fine. I don't, maybe I just
The
haven't.
the latest that came through was 4.
What did you all have?
let me check.
I have 4,
So that's
At,
on
on the 20,
5th.
Which
the
is
25th.
yep, I have it at 4.
Yeah, okay, that's just me. I'm available, but, but still so Ways and Means starts at 4. I thought Public Safety was the 26th, so now it's the
So did I.
25th. Because we won't have what time does that start?
5:30.
So, I guess an hour and a half. Public Safety Committee, since Tom's out of town, I don't believe we'll have a quorum unless I'm there.
Are you not gonna be there?
No, I'm planning on being
Oh,
there,
so
but I
it
can't be in
might
two
be-
places at once. So that, you know.
I'll get back with the committee chair. We might have to revisit that because, I mean, he can meet with members of public safety. I won't be there either. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't,
it's not an ideal time. It won't work. So we'll ask him to reconsider another time.
yeah, and I wasn't
I didn't make that
loving the
connection
idea
either.
of doubling up.
It could be much later or earlier.
But, so we have Brentwood bound, we have some follow-up questions.
Yes.
And we wanted to be ready with options.
Yes.
If we were, told to find,
Right.
space for 2 hires in the police department. And then are there other subject matters that we need to cover? Because that sounds like what we're down to.
I have a couple, I've been reading policy and I have a couple questions, but I think they're things that have been there before but have never been noticed, so I think email can take care of all of that.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
And, to the extent to which, you're able to, get questions answered, then we'll bring forward relevant things to the committee.
Any
but-
elected official that asks questions, I will share our response
Okay.
with the entire board.
And I would encourage other members of the board, as I did at the last meeting, that to the extent you have questions, please submit them and we'll work through those as well. So, let's see. We don't have any new business. Do we have any citizens comments? No. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're done. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.